Uh, we've got a new checklist item that Richard and I uh, dreamed up in our health and safety risk register uh, little mini meeting last week. Rich, maybe do you want to talk about this? And let us check in on our well-being.
Yeah, there's probably a bigger discussion just to say what we did with looking at the risk registers, but from an Enspiralish point of view, one of the main risks that we see is about just people's well-being, and the risk that we've seen play out multiple times where there's a dark side of meaningful work, which is people overdoing it and burning out and running out of their internal resources and kind of being out of action for months at a time. So we wondered if we could lead the way by being really explicit about our own well-being checks and keeping an eye on each other and saying, are you using your no as boldly and abundantly as you could be? Are you overdoing the yes? Do you have needs? And not necessarily that we're going to be able to solve everyone's needs right away, but at least making them more visible and making sure that we're getting the looking after that we need, because we don't have managers, right, that are over the shoulder. So we didn't really talk through what a well-being check might look like for us, but that's something that we could invent together.
Have you done one in any other context before?
No, I've just I had always assumed that the practice of checking in would be kind of good enough. I mean, we have actually, that's not true. We have in Lumia, we had a working group, the Well working group, and they would periodically send a survey around, which is a bit more of a, well, it's just a different flavor, right? Some people feel like they can be vulnerable in a text form in a way that they wouldn't face to face, which was okay. It meant that there was a space where someone could raise a flag and say, I'm having a hard time, and then we could mobilize.
In Greater Than, we're doing, again, it's just a form that we're sending out 2 weeks in advance of our MVB. We only do MVB every quarter at Greater Than. But I don't know, for me, I felt a bit of juiciness and energy, and like, as Rich said, maybe being a little bit more explicit in this space, maybe a little bit more vulnerable, and maybe a little bit more regular. I don't know what that might look like. I can't think of anything creative other than just maybe doing another round, but maybe there is a more creative way.
Yeah, there might be some well-designed questions that, because I think what we want to be doing is knowing when people are in distress. We don't necessarily want to be hearing all about it and solving it on the board meeting, but I wonder if we could design a few questions which are kind of like, do you have do you have the resources and the support that you need to navigate smoothly through the emotional reality that you're in at the moment, something like that.
We could do that. The other thing that was coming up was we could do a fist of 5, and maybe the lowest 2 have a conversation. Maybe. I don't know.
I guess when I first saw the well-being check-in, I was thinking first of the network as opposed to us individually. And so I guess, yeah, so that has shifted my thinking a bit about it. That I was initially thinking, like, was there anything that has popped up for you from the network in the last month that needs to be mentioned here as a concern? But I guess we're just speaking, I see we're just speaking individually as a group.
Could be both.
Yeah, we talked about both. That I'm going to have a word with the pods working group and see if they're willing to. I mean, they're obviously offering the pods, which is largely about supporting people's well-being, but ask them if they'd be up for doing something like a survey or some kind of regular pulse, which is another way of just opens up another door for people to knock on if they're in distress. So I think that'll happen as well. But yeah, we also wanted to think about ourselves.
Mm. And also, I know that every Catalyst cohort is different, but certainly I remember in the constellation that was Joshua, Richard, and myself, every one of our core practices was a round of what we called noticings, and that was more at the system level. So maybe also I was sort of assuming that that is a persistent pattern for catalysts. But again, that's assuming. I don't know that to be true. We could ask. So for today, any proposals for how we might just check in on our well-being?
Well, I haven't got a proposal. I've just been, just in this few moments of talking about it, I'm kind of going through my own, like, what's the stresses on me and how are they being metabolized and who have I got around me? And it's like, yeah, no, it's totally manageable. Like, I feel like I've got a pretty sophisticated network of people that care about me and good open relationships, and the stresses are okay. You know, it's like they're all within the safe operating zone. And I don't know if there's a systematic way to get at that information, but just spending a few minutes thinking about it works for me.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think I would be open.
No, go, Charlie.
I think I'd be open to it as part of the check-in, but I would feel less open to it as part of the recorded presentation of the meeting. So if we were going to include that as part of our check-in, as part of building trust interpersonally and exploring the idea of our well-being, I think I would feel more comfortable if we just did that as part of the check-in only.
I guess I've got a question, whether this is in regard to us or in regard to the network in general. A question about the clarity around the resources if someone's not okay. What are we doing with that? Because to ask into that space, but then have no way of supporting or picking up on or, I guess, addressing if somebody is struggling, is vulnerable, and they put that into the space and it's just dropped, or there's no capacity to then support that person, what you're doing is a breach of trust, rather than providing any support. So I guess if we're going to ask these questions, I'd like us to also, I guess, be clear on what the response is. How are we picking up that person or those people or whatever, if they're not okay?
I mean, for me, Nancy, that's a very clear, like, I don't feel like it's the MVB's mandate to do that for individuals in the network. That's the membership's mandate. Again, unless there's a very, very specific risk of danger or injury, I'm pretty clear that that's not our mandate. And for me, what I'm interested in is mostly just checking in on ourselves, because we're holding I guess the only legal risk to the organization sits within the four of us. And for me, I think that that's the only thing that's I don't feel like we have the mandate to be responsible for any other individuals specifically. I could be wrong, but that's always been my kind of posture and position as a board member.
And having this kind of conversation and unpacking that tension and risk, like, to me, that I think increases the safety if we can learn how to communicate about it effectively. Because in my head, I have a picture where, I mean, I feel responsible to the three of you, that if any of you are in trouble, I'd be there. And I think that's the point of having a team, right? Is that, like, there's some degree of a boundary there where we can hold each other. And obviously there'll be stuff that happens in your life that's well, that you don't want to bring to us, but also that we don't have capacity for. But at least I feel like as a team that we can shepherd each other to find the help that we need, if not to offer it immediately. And also there's some kind of personal responsibility thing of like making sure you're doing the work that you've got to do to stay well. And that involves, like nurturing your own support networks and all that sort of stuff. And that's like implicit in the back of my mind. And I assume that's like something like best practice for Enspiral is that people, that's I think why there's been so much energy going into the pod stuff, is to make sure that people have those little cell boundaries, because there's absolutely people in the past that I know about the present, but in the past who have been part of Enspiral and had really hard times and didn't really get any support because they didn't have a little cell to be in, they didn't have a pod to be in. And so it's just like, they're kind of isolated. And if there is going to be some kind of full network survey or sample or pulse or something, that framing about the limits of what we've got to offer, I think is going to be really essential to doing that, like you say, so it's not a breach of trust.
And that in the past, my understanding also was one of the original callings or longings from the well-being working group that we had that we no longer have. Yeah, so I'm just interesting how that all lands with you, Nancy.
I'm wondering perhaps, or sensing that maybe there's a really different sense for those of you who feel really bedded in the network in that way, and then perhaps me not being so much, because I guess I don't know that we want to touch on it here, but I'm seeing often within the Enspiral network the question about well-being being asked, but I'm not experiencing where that gets picked up as support. There's kind of the assumption that each individual will have people around who can, I guess, step in. But I think for those who aren't bedded into the centre, there's not necessarily those networks there. And so the experience, if you ask and they share and it's not picked up, is one of the opposite to what the intention is. It's an experience of abandonment rather than support, because you're asking someone to be vulnerable. That's a whole bigger thing, but it's something I guess I'm seeing. But listening to you guys, I'm like, whoa, okay, so you're all really clear that's there's a sense that you know how to access that support, that you will be heard within the context, and that how to, you feel supported within that. Whereas I'm not so sure, I guess, away from the core of Enspiral, I'm not sure that that's everybody's experience.
And I guess where I'm still confused, Nancy, is are you holding that as a responsibility or an accountability of this configuration of the MVB? Because if you are, then that's clearly a divergent opinion.
No, it was more me just bringing that up. So if we're going to ask about well-being, what are we going to do in response? Because if I share into this group that I'm not very, that I'm not coping and I'm not well, and actually nobody hears that, or, there's no kind of way of I guess, responding to that, then I'm going to feel really let down, So, yeah. So I guess I'm kind of going, okay, if we're asking, we need to know what we're going to do with that. That might be an individual, we need to know what we're going to do. It might be a collective, we need to know what we're going to do.
Can you articulate what you'd need to feel safe then to be able to do that? I mean, for example, would it be okay if, for example, I shared that I was really struggling and the response was, or the ask was, do you have the support you need? And I said, yes, would that be enough? If I said, I don't have the support I need, and there was an offer for a call or a referral, would that be enough? What would be enough, I guess, is a question for you to feel safe.
I guess a sense that if I did put that into this group, that it would be heard in some respect. you know, not that it's just like, oh yeah, great, tick, move on. Because within an on-spiral context, I'm not necessarily bedded in where people are in touch with what's going on for me on a daily basis and picking me up on that. Yeah, so, and I guess, you know, I don't know you guys well yet. Yeah, so I guess I'm expressing a reserve about sharing on that deeper level in that context.
This does get
And
into
what would be enough
Nancy.
would be, yeah, somebody taking the time to follow up, to check, to go, have you got everything you need? Is there anything we can do?
It does kind of get into what old-fashioned employment relationships look like, you know, that one of the things about being a manager is sometimes, some people's real emotional needs show up and you have got some kind of responsibility to deal with it, even though it steps outside of what you think the job description is. Like that stuff happens. And whether it's a legal or a moral responsibility, it's like, if you're in a position of responsibility, then you kind of have to show up. And by foregoing managers, I think my implicit assumption is that we've all signed up to offer that to each other to some degree. And obviously with a lot of room for people have different capacities, different, you know, like I've known Susan for 8 years or something like that. Like obviously the capacity of that relationship is very different from my relationship with you, Nancy. And there's a lot of nuance and understanding that, and some people will have that intuitively and other people, maybe it'll be helpful to have it more explicit. Like this is, because we don't have some kind of centralized system which is providing these checks and balances, we have a decentralized system, and these are the sort of patterns that we expect things to work in. And I think everyone that's in the pods working group has the same picture in mind, which is the place that you get support is from small groups. This Enspiral pod can be one of your little circles. In a good life would involve having lots of little circles around you in different domains. And maybe it would be useful to have those pods be more self-aware about what are the risks of inviting more needs than you have resources to help with, and that sense of abandonment or betrayal that can happen. And the other question is, are we as a membership, not as a directorship, but is the membership satisfied that the pods are the primary well-being mechanism, or do we want to invest in a different strategy as well, which provides a space for people that haven't got themselves into a nice little group, but are new here and kind of looking around the room, and stuff comes up. We've seen it every time we have a retreat and someone new comes. Usually there's some people that are being really, really moved by the experience, because we're telling you, hey, you can be yourself, you can bring your whole self, all your different dreams and visions and fears and stuff, they're all welcome here. And you see stuff comes up, and in the face-to-face gathering space, there's usually enough responsive people that just kind of wrap around them and give them the support they need. But in the decentralized digital space, it's much easier for people to slip through.
I was just, thanks for those reflections, Rich. I was just thinking of bringing it back to this configuration. I'm wondering if what is needed here is, I guess what we're saying is, in one direction, we're wanting to offer support to one another, and that may mean like sort of pivoting at least part of the meeting to address whatever comes up if required or if needed. So being open to that sort of toggling of plans to support what has come up if needed. But in the other respect, if the person who's brought something up that needs addressing, maybe respecting the time we've got here for just getting through the commitments that we had agreed for this time as well. So maybe a bit of both, that we would like be open to setting up alternative times to like chat again, or like take some time during this space to listen and feed into it, or offer ideas or support in the way that we need.
Mm.
And then yeah.
I'm just saying
That's what
Dan's
I'm thinking.
arrived, so what do you want to do?
I wonder if we just keep this on the agenda for the next couple of meetings, and I'll be having a conversation with the pods group before the next meeting, and keep coming at it, because it's not a puzzle that's going to be solved easily, is it?
Great. Thanks for taking that time. And I hope it's okay that I didn't rush us through that. Felt right. So I'm just going to let Dan in. Hola.
Hello.
Hello, Dan.
Hi, Dan.
Hi, friend. Would you like to arrive? And then maybe share? That would be great. And it's tomorrow's fish bowling, by the way. That's why he's got his video off.
Oh yeah, okay. So I'm doing. I'm doing good. I'm just spread too thin across too many things. Seems like a normal status quo at the moment. I've had 2 hours sleep in the last 2 days, which was by mistake, but I got kind of insomnia and I didn't know what else to do with myself, so I just worked. Shipped something yesterday, made really good progress on the Enspiral site. COVID-19 stuff. I'm leading Simon, Teg, Ian, Pete, Jacobson, a guy in Costa Rica, and that team's going well. So just feeling on top of everything. And then I think about my personal life and my taxes and stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, that's a pile of crap. I don't want to look at that. So kind of neglecting personal things for the sake of work, which feels like an endless dilemma for me. That's lovely to see you all. I didn't make the members meeting, so yeah, it's nice to kind of see peeps and connect. That's me.
Hi.
Hey, bro.
We've kind of been together for half an hour now, and we haven't got very far through our agenda, so that's okay. So yeah, it'd be great just to get a little bit of an update from you on the website project.
Okay, cool beans. So firstly, a disclosure, I do not like Squarespace one bit. So this has been a little bit pulling nails for me, but worked my way around some problems and it's coming together. So I can quickly share screen because it's always better to just do a show and tell on these things. So this is our Squarespace site. Most of the assets have just been ported across. There's a few things to like note, for example, that are still work in progress. Namely, haven't yet worked out how to do the video on the landing page. Looking at that later, and it needs a review from. I need Kim and my team to come back and look over the design again. Her and Tennille kind of set the direction. I've had to tweak a few things around font sizes and stuff, and I just need them to come back and like, this is probably now too big, and I've done something, so I just need them to come back and tell me how to fix things. And this landing page needs some work and love. Community, worked out how to embed the community faces, and I've also updated it so that we're using Jotform now, and people won't have to use Gravatar anymore. And so I've spoken with Jorium. All the ambassadors are getting axed, and we're just going to have a wall of people, and we're going to simplify. I'm going to work with Kim to simplify the cards, and people will be able to upload their own images through the form. And the form, Charlie, I found the bug. I'll show you exactly what the bug is in case it happens again. It's a very specific thing. But basically, the Jotform allows for people to, it's that thing we always wanted where you can see what your current values are, and then you can change the ones you want. It's just like a really simple thing, but we've not had it before. So the new form, when it comes online, will tidy that up. And it also means that everyone's got the same URL every time. So if I jump over to our Airtable database, sorry, I know I'm scrolling really fast and that's awkward, but bear with. So this here's my record. And if I open it, you can see it'll take, I don't know, 3-4 seconds. And then unless it's broke on demo day, it should populate the current fields. Yeah, there we go. So essentially what's happened there is, and I think I'm going to have to make a video explaining to people how this works. And then that video will probably, I'll talk to Malcolm and Charlie and get it in like the welcome video of like, here's your unique URL, which was, okay, that was the URL that I forgot to point out in Airtable is the same every time. It doesn't change over time, which is really important. So we can basically send them their URL when a new contributor signs up, and that URL will never change. They can just keep it in their inbox or bookmark or whatever. And then essentially between the dividers is your current value and then the kind of action you can take on it. The spacing is a bit painful, the styling sucks. And yeah, so you can kind of go through this and it's all public profile stuff. And this was kind of the critical feature was being able to like upload a file, crop it, and it just work. We do actually still provide people, I will provide people an option of using Gravatar, and then they just have to go and signal that they want to override with Gravatar. So I'm expecting most people to leave that as false, and that would be the default value. So that will kind of, I'd say like 30% of people when we originally pushed out the original form just like couldn't get their head around how Gravatar worked. And it was just really unfortunately, oh, I've lost my Airtable. It was really unfortunate, but what can you do? This fixes it. The way it works is it's a bit weird, but it goes through a Zap on optimized Zapier account, and on the way it actually records them as into Google Drive. So I pointed this out to, I don't know if it was Charlie or and John, but over time we're going to end up accumulating a folder of pictures of people, which I didn't really intend to do, but it is okay. It is going to be quite nice of just, obviously I'll get rid of these, but yeah, in the future we'll essentially have hundreds of pictures of people that they've uploaded. So that's quite a nice kind of, this is still just stored in the website folder in the comms group. So that was like an interesting kind of side effect of how I made it work. It's back to the website. So community page is the current work in progress. I've got direction from Jorium. I'm kind of amongst the code right now, fixing some things and finishing off the plumbing. Getting this rendering in Squarespace was a bit painful, and updating it is, I'm just going to have to write some very specific instructions for anyone that ever wants to update it. But the reality is once it's going, it's probably not going to have to be updated, so it should be fine. On to the more kind of significant changes to what I've done. So I spoke with Jorium and he was like, dude, I don't want ventures. Basically, I don't want ventures managing their own stuff. Essentially was my takeaway. So I converted the ventures page into it's just a Squarespace static page that you can edit. And this is a first pass at some content. And you basically have a list of things here. And oh, they stopped working, but these are all going to be links that link down to the specific area. Looks like I've broken something. That means that it didn't quite work. But basically, it's just going to be like a little section with each company or venture and a little call to action on them. I've made it so that this is a link, this is a link, and this is a link. So trying to have as many links as possible. Creating fake quotes for people. This is kind of probably the key work that I don't know how much. I'll probably loop Jorian back in and say, and Kim maybe, and get, we don't have a collection of good assets for all the companies. Optimi was they don't have anything on the website. I just could screenshot. Most of this is just screenshot of people's sites, grabbed off the about pages, and then found some line and attributed it to one of the founders. So the idea with the ventures page is that essentially you have I don't know what you want to call it, a logo cloud that you can click, and it's a quick link down to wherever you want to be in the page. So that's kind of our kind of iteration of the ventures page. It means that the comms group will be totally in charge of managing this. We're going to have to define image specs for everything we need. This image, this image, this image. Well, I suppose it's just those three. So that's kind of up next work. And the description stuff here will have to go through some sort of process of interacting with Jorium to get companies to, if they want to go and change things or update things. So that's the ventures page. About page. Thought long and hard about this. It's ended up being a blog, which I know is a little bit, I know people kind of go, oh my God, we don't want a blog, that's a thing to manage, but it's not really a blog. It's a blog under the hood, but you can't really tell. But it's a good way of structuring the page and the data. So just here, when we get to journey, this is the blog bit. So, and it just goes back in time, copying the content out of the previous. Thing to note, and I think I'm going to bubble to possibly look through the different chapters in that I work to get in the book, and try and pull out stories from the specific years, or just find people from. I think it's like a nice content authoring blog assignment kind of task for someone to pick up. Whether it's going and finding someone that was around in one of these years and interviewing them, or someone that was there just deciding to author something for themselves. Because yeah, I think we could there's a good opportunity of storytelling here. Otherwise, I'll probably work out how to hide this for now, but I'll touch base with Joriam and get a sense of what he wants from that. But essentially it's a blog with with one entry a year is kind of the idea. Lastly, support. Talked to Charlie and just decided to go with, we do have like the Contribute app is pretty much there for looking like the Action Station donate form, just so everyone knows, donate form, so everyone knows what I'm talking about. This was like a specific request, like I think Kate defined the requirement way back when, and it was kind of hot, like 80% done and then dropped. And so I'm pretty committed to getting this up because me and Daz got 80% of it done. So I just would like to finish that off. But what Charlie and I agreed on was that rather than kind of stressing about getting that in this week, what we'll do is we'll just turn on the Squarespace donate button, which like is not a particularly great user experience from my point of view, but it does technically mean it works. So that's kind of where we're at right now with the Contribute page. I don't even know. I haven't actually clicked this button yet. I just know that I ticked the right thing. Yeah, there you go. So presumably that works once it's live. What else? Have yet to wire up MailChimp. I need to follow up with Charlie or Nat for access to that. Have set up Google Analytics. Have set up Google Capture to stop spammy bots signing up for our newsletters. Anything else? No, that's kind of it. So like where we're at is most pages mostly done, I'd say. Landing page probably needs the most work at this point, just because I think we're aiming to tell a slightly different story on there going forward. And I need to check in on Jorium for like content and copy. Like, yeah, or if this is it, this doesn't look good and it needs to be corrected. So yeah, that's kind of, landing page is kind of one of the last things I'm going to be working on. And at this point in time, it's very much kind of needing to include Jorium and Kim in that work, and kind of get advice on kind of design changes and copy changes, because I'm not the person to make either of those decisions. Yeah. Timeline-wise, John asked me if I could be done by Friday. I'm gunning for it, and that's my commitment. And I suppose, what else can I wrap up with? Yeah, I suppose for obvious reasons, this has not gone according to original plan. And at least as far as what was in my control, I'm sorry for what I could control of that plan not going according to plan. Yeah, that's I suppose. Anyone got any questions?
Has anybody else been working on it with you, Dan, or has it just been you?
Tennille and Kim kind of set the broad direction from a design perspective like 2 months ago, and then it was just kind of like, okay, all the imagery can just be easily swapped out. Most of what I've been focused on is just building out the structures in Squarespace. So this is kind of where I need input at this point in time on like, hey, if we don't like these banners, we need to change them, but we're having a banner. That's kind of, yeah.
I mean, I'm wondering if just to get you over the line, just focusing on the actual technical elements and leaving the more aesthetic elements for now, because it is Squarespace, and that is, I think, technically should be easier, to change copy, etc. So I think that if my preference would be for you to just focus on the technical, getting the technical T's crossed and I's dotted. That makes sense.
Yeah, so that's very much my intention. Like, I have not spent any time on this design stuff. Like, I've literally just been shoving stuff in and structuring pages. I don't think that that's design complete at all. I think it's setting a banner was like 2 seconds work. I haven't spent any time on it.
Thanks. I don't have any other questions. Anybody questions or reactions before we move on?
I don't have any questions, just to say it looks good, and I feel your pain of dealing with a job that's more complicated than you want it to be, and excited to have. I'm doing the same on the handbook at the moment, of like trying to get the technical bottlenecks out of the way so that more people have access to contributing their juice to the thing without needing me.
Yeah.
I don't have any questions, but thanks, Dan. I'm just sort of catching up to date with all of this, and I'm getting the context for it. So that was, you know, I guess I was just following along and seeing what was happening. So thank you.
Yeah, that's all good.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Yeah, happy to check in about getting you wired into the MailChimp and looking at what happens to that donate button once it's going.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just you turn on Stripe and money appears in Stripe. I think that's my understanding of how the donation button for Stripe for Squarespace works. But we'll get that wired up and then we'll run a test and you'll be able to see whatever the variable thing is that comes through. Yeah, I suppose like something to note is like where I'm going to leave this will be, I'll do my best to I'll probably make a video of that will be quite technical about like this is how you do a release of updating the contributor, the pages of faces. And that's probably one of the more complicated things, but also this junk form integration that runs that as well is a little bit complicated. So I'll do some docs around that, but probably mainly for Charlie. And then I'll probably just record a video of onboarding Joram into how the only other real complicated thing is the about page with the blog posts. And that's pretty much that's stock Squarespace stuff. So he'll get his head around that pretty quick.
Great. Thanks,
Yeah.
Dan.
No, all good.
Hi.
Oh, am I going? Okay. Bye-bye.
See ya. Thank you.
Bye,
See ya.
man.
Thanks very much.
Enjoy the cookies.
Cheers.
Every board has cookies, yeah?
Yeah.
I can't leave.
Like teleporting in and out.
All right.
Speaking of teleporting, there's Colin.
There's Colin with wood. Oh, not that.
Popped out of nowhere.
He's like Fidel misses. Whew. Sorry. Only Rich got that. That's okay. How about I share my screen and let's update our actions. Charlie, check in with Phil on the Lifehack website contract. Oh, you're muted. You're muted, Charlie. Charlie.
Sorry, that's all done. Paid for last year's services and set up paying for forthcoming 9 years of stuff.
Awesome.
And I've updated the resting balance of the income and expenses account to match accordingly.
Amazing. So will you mark that complete then, Richard, since you're... check in with John Dan on the contract for the Enspiral.com maintenance. Charlie.
Well, that's Dan sort of brought us up to date with where that's at. So I guess it's still in progress because it's not done.
Was that specifically about the porting of the site, or was that about the maintenance of the contract for the maintenance? Or is it in the same ballpark?
Yeah, maybe I got confused the last time about whether I needed to ask about ongoing support for the website or not.
There was that proposal that came through, I think, before the change of boards. Charlie, if you're going to hold on to that, I'll find the thread, and maybe we could have a talk about that to see where that's at.
Okay.
Thanks. Charlie, it looked like you completed your conflict of interest register. Did I see that?
Yeah, I think I actually had done that prior to last meeting, and I had just forgotten that I had done it. So.
Thank you.
And just to jump up to the estimated complete date, shall we just put the next board meeting for completing the bamboo thing.
Great.
Done.
Thank you. Handbook update with the new directors, Charlie?
Nothing's done there yet. I was expecting to tee up with Rich at some point to know how to do that.
Yeah, so just an update there. I did a bunch of work on the handbook and changed. We had some scope creep where I decided that the handbook's unbelievably inaccessible to update at the moment. And so instead of updating it, I'm making a system to make it more easy to be updated. And there's been a lot of interaction in the Slack group, and we've been making some progress, and I think we've got a good solution, and it just needs another hour or two to get it done. So that means that all of the things that say we need to update the handbook haven't been done, but by next meeting, we'll have a simpler system, and hopefully that'll encourage more people to be sharing in the editing and updating of the handbook. So I just took that decision assuming there's nothing in there that's actually super critical that we get done immediately.
Great. So you're going to update all of the handbook items with next meeting date?
Yeah.
Yeah, great update on the minutes report. Did you have many likes or messages from that?
Just a couple, and I assume it'll be. I'll try and do that sort of editorial comment once a month at least, and just put a little update. And I guess people will over time sort of drift in there and catch up.
Just gonna put a parking lot comment there. I'm wondering if it would be interesting for Joriam when he does his monthly recorded updates just to have a little MVB minute.
Yeah, I had that idea. Assuming that we have something that the network needs to hear about from us. I do want to reserve the. It's kind of like the boy who cried wolf, right? Like that. If you're hearing from us, it should be important.
Cool.
I reckon.
Keeping the minimum in the minimum viable board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if it's nothing, it could just be the silent minute. MVB minute.
A minute of silence.
Minute of
Grim.
silence. Update traffic light system. Rich and I had started this conversation, and I reckon that once we get the business risk register done, so we finished the we made a good hash, I think, of the health and safety risk register this month. Next month, before the next meeting, we'll we'll pair on the business risk register, and from that will come the updated traffic light system. So if you could also put that back to next board meeting for me, Rich. Number 5. Check in with Charmaine on the overseas shareholder question.
Yeah, I've checked in with her multiple times and she still hasn't come back yet. So I'm still waiting on that, unfortunately. It's quite a linchpin for me doing some other work, and I've explained this to her and Lucas and Dan. So they're aware of the implications of it and how important it is to me. So yeah, just waiting to hear back.
Do you need help, Charlie?
I'm not sure if there's anything else I can do other than just stay in contact with Charmaine to find out what she's found out. Yeah, there is a point about the so I'll just speak briefly about some of the flow-on effects of this. Is we can't sign ourselves up as board members on the company's register until we have the shareholders agreement, and we can't have the shareholders agreement until we know about this, about the composition of shareholders and whether we'll be subject to more financial auditing, I guess. So, and then without us being on the register, we can't change over bank accounts from Bart to myself to then change over who can authorize payments and things. So there's sort of a number of flow-on effects from being blocked on this.
I mean,
so
I just feel like how often are you sending her reminders? Like
at least weekly, yeah. So,
Charlie, would it help? You know, I'm happy to jump in if you thought it would help, just in that I don't know these people. So maybe, I mean, I know Charmaine obviously, but maybe, you know, if you thought it would be helpful, I'm happy to jump in and send an email, just putting on my board hat and following up or asking, you know, for follow up.
okay, thanks, Nancy. Maybe if I haven't heard back from her this week, I'll let you know, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, yep, cool.
Thanks, Charlie. So I had my first meeting with the very small comms working group last week. So John facilitated that. So the comms working group as it is now is Joriam and Alina, and a little bit of Nat, but she couldn't make it because the meeting was on JV's birthday. And we've got another meeting scheduled for next week. So I'm asking them what they need. It's just a longer process than expected. Strikingly cost, Charlie.
That's done. Optimi has access to the Strikingly page, and Ants has handed it over to Optimi, and it's being paid for on the foundation card.
Great, thanks. So again, this the risk registers, we did one, we still need to do the other one. We did health and safety. Although I am going to look into New Zealand health and safety requirements, full stop, just to make sure that we're not overlooking anything that legally we need to have in our health and safety plan.
Should we just have another short meeting like we did last time, Susan, on the second register, and then maybe in the next board meeting we can give a good update about it?
I would love that.
Cool.
I guess, sorry, in relation to that, I guess as a board member, I would wonder if when Enspiral holds events, whether ultimately we're the ones responsible if anyone gets hurt or anything like that.
We have, that's in our risk register, is that any events that have the Enspiral branded name must have a risk register.
Yeah,
but I think that's different than the question you're asking, Charlie, is that as directors of Enspiral, is that enough for us to feel safe in our duties?
For me, that's why it's on you to check out the requirements legally first, and then my job was going to be to communicate with brands and gatherings working groups about can we actually offset that risk and say it's on you and make sure that you've got a plan for every event that you do, or do we have to be more proactive than that? We're going to have to figure that out.
Great, thank you. Any other comments on the outstanding actions? I don't have any. I'm just looking, it looks like the dates have been shifted and we don't have any other actions yet. So let's just move forward into metrics. Charlie, I saw, thank you that you sent the board report out this afternoon. Was there anything specifically in there worth mentioning, or would you like to share your screen?
Okay. Yeah, I've done a report for the network. Share screen. Yeah, nothing really stands out from last time. I've got if we scroll down here, we've got over to this column, April. We've got the actual cash balances of these two working groups. So gatherings has the 9,000 basically there towards the next event as a seed fund. And the mission account is a bit lower than this number because of the balancing I had to do. So there's really about 8,000 in the mission account that is unallocated at present. Again, that's in the financial report. And if we look at the subscription summary briefly, it's still relatively the same. We haven't had many people drop out of paying for subscriptions at this point. The core is still about 75% covered by individuals and 25% from ventures. The fairground bill has gone up from 105 to 121. And we paid for Phil's Lifehack hosting. So that's why the software subscriptions for April looks higher than it is normally.
Charlie, it would be interesting for me just to see any changes in contributors from month to month.
So do you mean contributor subscriptions or just the actual numbers of contributors?
Both.
Okay. So for the numbers of contributors, you can see that tracking along right here, and the subscribers tracking just from month to month. I don't have a pretty chart or anything, but
no, that's all good.
You can see the numbers here. Any questions?
No, nothing out of the ordinary. It looks like things are tracking along as normal. In the mission fund, how much do we have left, and should we be signaling a co-budget round?
Well, there's about 5,000 in people's individual co-budget accounts that's just sitting there waiting to be spent towards the next round. And then, as I said, there's about 8,000 in the mission account. It might be good to make a point of asking that question at the next board meeting to see if there's been much fluctuation between the mission account and income and expenses. But it's been landing pretty consistent, I would say, over the last 3 months. So especially now that I've sorted out what the balance of the gatherings group is, we should know more or less how much is there to put towards a round if we want.
Cool. And on the gatherings, it's probably worth mentioning that Golden Pandas have given the gatherings working group thumbs up that we'll also be doing the financial hosting for winter retreat. So
thank you, Pandas.
You're welcome.
On the co-budget question, just remind me, there's some, like you say, there's like $5,000 sitting in there that's not been allocated in people's accounts. Do we have a policy about flushing those out or reallocating, or like where people can decide if they've saved or if they're actually just stranded? We haven't got a formal thing there, right? That's kind of up to the discretion of each round.
Yeah, and so at the end of each round, if it's been distributed from the network to individuals to put towards the projects as they choose, then those have definitely been flushed back in. But it's the ones that are from like ventures, basically, that are just sitting there waiting for the next round. So if we look, this is in co-budget at the moment. And so this, tells us exactly how much is in there. And so, there's still some in a funded bucket. And then there's this amount in members' accounts. But there's no formal, there's no reason to flesh it out without a round happening. But to answer your question, I don't know that there is any particular rules around how long it stays in there, other than if people exit the network, then those funds get flushed back in.
Cool. Because it's just like, it's nice to be able to launch around and say we've got this much money to play with, but if we know that there's if some significant fraction of that is kind of frozen in a sense, by people having an account with money that they're not actually very active around, it's good to know that. But looking through this list, it's like a lot of these people are pretty engaged anyway.
Most of the
Yeah.
people with money are, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for the financial update. So going to general business, thanks for making those notes. Any other general business items for discussion?
Well, I had put in this question about co-budget round. Did I drop that in the
great.
other day?
Oh, cool. Oh, thanks.
Because I wasn't really clear on what's our policy there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to lay that though if we want.
I think it might be worth having a discussion. It won't be long about the frequency and cadence of these meetings. I don't have any other needs. Oh, I guess again, I just love to have a little conversation about the contract with Alina, and there has been a proposal made for adding just a tiny amount to her monthly payment for also creating an external newsletter. I'd like to talk about that.
I don't think I've got anything.
Maybe wondering about our runway account and if that's still the right amount to be setting aside, and how often do we review that?
Anything from you, Nance? Okay.
Nope.
We've got 16 minutes, but I'd like to ring fence at least 5 of that to get some reflections from our anti-goldfish. Maybe Charlie, it looks like yours might be the longest conversation. So do you want to go?
Okay, let me just share a screen again. So I guess when we set aside the budgeted runway, we had targeted for 12 months. And I guess those funds would be used to keep paying any obligated fees that the company has to do, and any sort of legal compliance in terms of winding down the company. I guess that's the idea behind those funds there, right? And so I'm wondering, it's been tracking about 12 months, a bit more, pretty much consistently every month. I'm just wondering if 12 months is the right amount, or if that's too conservative, or if it should be like shifted back to 8 months or something. Reason being is that that would then free up some funds that could potentially be used for as unallocated. But otherwise, they'll just continue sitting there, not really bothering anyone and not really celebrating anything.
I mean, it'd be interesting, and I don't think we ever went through the process of actually understanding what other companies do. So I'm wondering if somebody would have the energy to maybe do a little bit of research on like what's best practice. Or, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I'd be interested in researching that question, so I could just gather some information over the next month.
Charlie, did you have some sense of why, what was the prompt behind maybe going back to 8 months, or your query around that?
I think I remember some conversation with JV about I guess specifically about when we were rejigging the bank accounts, and his feeling that 6 months was about right, and that 3 months would be a bit risky, and anything more than 6 months is more conservative in terms of risk. But that's just his opinion and his view on risk. So it just made me wonder, since it's just sitting there, it's been sitting there at 12 months and slowly accumulating, whether it's better to have it a little bit less conservative than that.
I mean, I
keep
think
money real. Yeah.
I mean, I think that our rationale behind that in the last board instantiation was that because we'd eliminated the concept of emergency reserves, that having 12 months was the right thing to do. That was the right kind of offset for eliminating emergency reserves. So that was the reason we did it.
I think it's also a pendulum swinging effect of us having been running it close to the wire for a long time, and then we finally got the books organized and we said, let's go put 12 months aside, and now we all feel very safe. And if JV says that 6 months is like the maximum that he'd be safe with, that's probably about my minimum. Just tuning off JV's willingness to take risks. So yeah, okay, a little bit more conservative than JV, I think, is a safe point to aim for.
I mean, maybe another way to look at it, Charlie, is what are the actual minimum expenses? Like, for example, if we knew that we had to wind up or that things were really going south, what would be actually the minimum to keep us as a board compliant, for example?
Is that a rhetorical question, or do you?
No. That's just maybe a suggestion for some framing around the questions that you're going to be researching.
Yeah. Sure.
Cool. Is that all you need?
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you. So one of the things that did come out of the first session with the comms working group was Alina has offered to parlay her twice monthly internal newsletters to a once a month external newsletter for mere $50 extra a month. So the proposal is to increase the comms newsletter contract from $200 to $250 a month. And I would just suggest that we do a simple Rumio on that, unless anybody has specific questions.
Do we have any idea how long she's spending on the newsletter?
I think she said something between 2 to 3 hours per newsletter.
Oh.
My sense would be that there's kind of phasing. So there's a phase which is just about catalyzing and supporting any new activity. And we've been hungry for a comms working group for a couple of years now. And if we can like pour in a little bit of money to someone who's doing a good job, then great, to stimulate more energy. And there might be a phase a bit further down the track, which is more about quality control and like, is this value for money and that sort of thing. So I wonder if whether it's a contract or at least just an agreement that like that we start from a position of yes, go your good thing, and then that sometime down the line there's a question about what does quality look like? Is there going to be a retrospective where we review?
I mean, I think that would be. I think that if we do decide to do a contract, that absolutely we should build in a either a 3 or 6 monthly retrospective at a minimum. So I guess let me make
Rich. I was just going to say, Rich, I really agree. Like, she seems to be rock solid, and yeah, like she's doing a really good job on it, in terms of being committed to it and putting it out there. And I'm all for supporting her with whatever money. My question was $50. It's not very much, but yeah, if that's reasonable for her, and yeah. yeah, no quibble at all about spending a bit more money for her to support her.
So can we do a Rumio on that? Great. I will let her and John know. Thank you. And then the final item, we had said that we were going to do a monthly cadence, at least during the COVID crisis. I'm not insinuating at all that the crisis is over, but I just thought I'd ask the question, are we still feeling good about a monthly cadence? Any objections, maybe?
I'm up for monthly, and I have a sense that it might change at some point.
Okay.
Yep, but the monthly is good for me at the moment. It just provides that more regular sort of contact and context. So it's not too long before a refresh on what things are happening.
Charlie?
Yeah, I think we're just finding our feet as a MVB group. So I think I feel the same way as Rich, that monthly is good for now, and at some point we might spread it out.
Lovely. Hey, Mr. Fishy, will you join us?
Hello.
Thanks for sticking with us. Just curious what you noticed.
Yeah. Any other guidance other than that? All right. So first of all, just like grateful for the opportunity to listen into this live. It's feels different than watching the video, which I've done for the previous one, just so that I'll have a bit more context. I found myself having a lot of kind of like thoughts and reactions around the two kind of like meatier topics. The initial one around the kind of team well-being check-in, and the other one around kind of Dan's project, especially having a bit more context for that. I have a few kind of just tactical reactions to the last couple of items. I am feeling a bit like anxious just because it's late on my end in terms of like how it may come across. Feeling kind of tired. So I wonder if it would be okay for me to just shoot you all a note with just a couple of thoughts on those two topics tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Tamar. And I appreciate you. Every time we speak, you teach me something about that. So thank you for being so self-aware.
I know that I'm a processor, and I'm probably also just overly sensitive to how I come across. So, but I'm giving myself a break here and not pushing myself to just dump it out there, because it's important to me that it's going to be heard the way that I intended it to.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. If you want to email us all at once, you can just send it to board, BOARD @enspiral.com.
Super. Will do.
Shall we check out together? Anybody got a checkout question, or are we just going to check out?
I don't have a checkout question, but I'll just check out. Yeah, it feels really good to get in a rhythm and in a container. I feel contained, which is enabling for me. It's the right kind of containment. And I'm glad that we spent the first half an hour talking about well-being, and I'm glad you let that roll, Susan, and didn't hurry us through. If we can avoid getting into hurry mode through our whole career as the board, then I feel like we're doing the job right. I think our job is to think slowly. So maybe we will stick with this monthly rhythm for a while and just have slow nibbles on, and let some of these discussions take 3 or 4 months to work their way out. That would suit me really well. I like to think that there's a place to go and be gradual because lots of other parts of the network I feel are quite energized and fast. So I'm coming out of that feeling good. I'm probably going to go for a walk and then have a nap and start my day again. That's me. Thanks, Tim. Thanks for joining us, Itama. It's good to see your face briefly.
I can jump on that. I really, really love that provocation of this being a more considered slow space, because the last iteration of the board didn't feel like that. And I love that this does. And it's interesting. I've been doing some board level work with some other boards, and I go between thinking, oh, these boards, they just turn up and they just, have an opinion, and then they just not responsible for anything, and they just leave. And this feels different. And I think that because we've got such crystal clarity on our mandate, it really is just very freeing. And yeah, just grateful and thank you. That's me.
I'll go next.
Okay.
If that's all right. Yeah, feeling really calmed from the container. And I just started having thoughts about what would be useful for other networks and communities from our experience here as a board. So I'm wondering if that might be a useful lens to throw in the mix, is what can we offer as a board MVB artifact to other networks as we do this, apart from this video. Yeah, so it was nice to feel like I could scale back and see a larger purpose for this group other than just what we're doing here. So that's always a nice feeling.
Lots of thoughts out of this month's board meeting. I guess for me, they're all still a slightly different flavour. So yeah, they're kind of helping to fill in the map of how this board works and how this particular configuration of the board works. And I have a wondering about when I'll stop feeling like I'm on the edges of context and feel like I'm more in the thick of context and able to contribute more. And maybe that's not actually where I'll ever end up. Maybe what I bring is just more that sort of fringe view, for want of a better word. But I guess I had that wondering tonight, and an appreciation of Charlie. I really appreciate having you in this mix, because lots of stuff ends up with you because of your admin sort of optimizer role, and you do that really well. So just having that appreciation for you in this configuration, and yeah, enjoying the process. And looking forward to seeing what Itmar says about his observations.
Would you like to check out Ismar?
Sure. Yeah, feeling just very kind of energized or charged in a positive way. Just spending kind of having just a length of the round to also just retrospect a little bit about why that is. I think this kind of like situations of, hey, look at this, tell me what you think, is one of my favorite ways of engaging. And while I didn't do it like, I did it very intuitively and like just signing up for this, but kind of when I apply my cognitive lens, feeling pretty fun and energized around that. And yeah, grateful for the opportunity, and looking forward to sharing some perspective.
Thank you. Just a note, it looks like next meeting date is not the 12th, but actually the 16th. Is that okay for everybody? Tuesday, the 16th? Same time, bat time, same bat station, right? I'll send the invite now, and I'll post this up to YouTube and let you know, Rich, shortly.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Bye.